Today let's do a feet study. We are starting from Proko's feet today. Part 1. Sketch the outline. So you want to think of the flat lines as something wraps around 3D objects. It's the mindset that works. I know it sounds funny when I say it, but just think of those simple lines as something that is 3D in real life. So here I'm trying to sketch it out, the basic shape of the feet. And I'm slowly dividing the toes, break them apart. As I slowly refine the outlines here, I would make some parts of the lines thicker, especially when it comes to the curves and the overlap of the lines. So the lines doesn't look so dead. To me, it's not monoline. It wouldn't look so boring. It will kind of bring a dynamic feeling to the outlines. So here I divide all the visible and the most contrast, bright and dark areas. And then now I would use parallel lines to do the first layer of shading. I know there are so many different small gradients on this feet, but I will do the first layer first. And then I'll slowly break it down, the most contrast shade and the brighter ones. Now we have the bright and dark area, and then we're gonna do the darker parts. This area is called Terminator. Yes, that Terminator. So Terminator is the most contrast dark area between the bright and dark part. In this piece, I use 5B pencil for this drawing. You can choose whatever pencil that works for you. Same thing as I apply the Terminator here, I also think of the structure and the shapes based on the structure of the feet. You can see that I only apply right between the bright and the dark area I just divided. By the way, the darkness depends on how you hold your pencil in your habits. Part 4. Subtle gradients. Apply a subtle shade across the Terminator. Make the lines longer to overlap both bright and dark areas so the Terminator doesn't look too sharp. Because we are not drawing metal, so we don't need that high contrast shading. Think of the structure and how the bones work together. And for each part of the shape, we use the same direction parallel lines to apply the subtle gradients. When you see me drawing, the lines and shades are easy to follow, I know. But the difficult part lies in the concept of transforming the 3D objects down on paper as 2D lines and shapes. When I draw, I would simplify each individual part in my mind into shapes, and then I apply the shades and Terminator accordingly. Part 5. Simplify the shapes again. So let's divide the leg ankle as a cylinder. Like this. So if the main light source comes from upper right, then our shades will stay on the left. Then think of the ankle like a sphere or like an angular sphere, like the one that I draw here. So the shades would follow along with the outlines like this. So you want to think of each part as a separate object, so that your shading would go along with that, then it will look more natural. Then the bottom of the foot, let's think of it like a pillow. Also the same, like a angular pillow. So it has some kind of thickness. or let's think of it like a tofu. How thick your feet bottom is, then we will have to apply the same length of the lines, the parallel lines, to represent that. The toe parts, you can think of like a bended cylinder or like this, like cubes, but longer and thinner. Once we have this concept, let's redo the dark parts again to make it all stick together collectively. So for this part, there seems to be some kind of tendon going up. So I would try to think of here as a smaller cylinder, and I apply lighter shades accordingly like this. Even though the main light source comes from the right side, I will still apply very light gray shades on the right to make it feel like a real cylinder going around. Same thing goes with the top of our feet here. Some veins and tendons combine all together, and they form some triangle shapes here. So we can see it as a simplified triangle shape first. So part 6 is more about details. There are some veins on the back of the feet. I want to make the holes between the veins as simple shapes, and then make it less obvious, given that it's not actually like a cave, a very deep hole. We just use simple shapes as reference. Eventually, we need to apply lines across it to make it look like the shadows of the veins. So that's kind of similar to the following steps of after we done Terminator. And then I slowly sketch it out the nails of the toes. I'm still using the pencil 5B here. After the shading of the toes, I started to make the shadow of the toes darker. Notice that the toes has especially two angles, two directions. One is actually facing down. The tip of the toes are facing down. So for this lighting, we want to make sure this part is actually a little bit lighter, but the tip is still a bit darker because it's facing down, and usually it's the flat surface like table, like chair, that could actually receive more lighting in most of the cases. I'm actually kind of drawing very hard for the shadow. It took me a lot of efforts to make it dark enough. Otherwise, it wouldn't look so obvious. If you have the habits of holding the pencil quite light, I suggest you, in this step, you can switch to 6B or even 7B for the shadow. So you will have the better and higher contrast when you want to study and remake this food study drawing. And then the lighter part, I want to apply some small holes and vents. But as I said before, it's not actually a very deep hole, so you don't want to make it too dark. Just some parallel lines to represent it and let us know, oh, there are some texture on the back of the feet. pretty much that's it. And then I want to make sure the joint here, the angular sphere here, there's a bone has a tiny hole over here, so I want to make sure the shadows here is surrounded by it accordingly. In human body, there's no absolute straight lines. It's all about different angles and different structures, sizes of curved lines. So that's why it's so difficult to draw human figure, especially for realistic style. But don't be frustrated. One step at a time, one thing at a time. You can study only hand drawing, feet drawing, as long as you want. Once you feel comfortable to move on, then you can move on to the next part of the body. Now I'm trying to sketch out the detail of the veins. It might look like I'm just drawing double lines here, but don't forget it's like a cylinder or a thread wrapping around the back of the feet. So if you want to make it more 3D, you want to make sure in the darker part of this thread-ish vein, it's gonna go with the dark parts. It's gonna get darker. And as for the lighter area, it's gonna look lighter as well. So it wouldn't end up just like two double lines. Okay, that's it. That's the end of this tutorial.